So welcome all, welcome to the webinar. So we'll start the webinar with the introduction of the speaker today. So this webinar is about the digital marketing, social media marketing. So we have with us Mr. Abhishek Sahai. He's the founder and CEO of N Merchant Business Solutions Private Limited. So there are some basic rules for the webinar to participate. You are requested to remain silent and listen to the speaker with attention. Please prepare your set of questions during the webinar and you can ask them in the Q&A round at the last. Raise your hand to ask a question and the coordinator will help you in speaking up your question. We will take the question campus wise. First we'll go with Mumbai and then we'll come to Delhi MA campus. Okay. So now over to you, Anuradha ma'am.
Hello?
Yes ma'am, we can hear you.
Is it audible?
Yes ma'am.
Okay, welcome all of you to this very exciting and interesting webinar. And we have with us Abhishek today. Abhishek is the founder for N Merchant Business Solution Lab, and he has his education from IIT Kharagpur in the domain of BTech, and again with IIT Kharagpur with his MBA.
Yeah, thanks Anuradha. This is Abhishek here. Can you guys hear me?
So there is some more little thing to be explained just now. Just a minute.
Okay. Sachin, am I audible to you?
Yes, you are audible, Abhishek.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, something more about his experience in the field. So prior to his starting M Merchant, Abhishek was the head of business development for Talisma, a software product company. He was responsible for sales for the emerging market, APAC, Middle East and Africa. He was also responsible for getting up indirect channel of business to generate demand and build strategic partners network. He also has been the head of consulting business of Talisma for 4 years, in which he handled all project delivery and consulting assignments for customers across the globe. So Talisma is based in 32 countries with a profit and loss responsibility. So he built the consulting practice of 40 consultants and delivered across 150 clients worldwide. Earlier in his career, during his work with Cambridge Technology Partners, now it is known as Symphoy Teleca, he has handled assignments for creating new companies, basically business to business marketplace for clients. He has wide exposure of handling consulting projects across various verticals: financial services, education, logistics, BPO, telecommunication, insurance, and whatnot, across the geographies. So let us hear from him what he has to share with us today. Over to you. Yeah, Abhishek, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so Sachin, the slides will have to be operated by you, right?
Yeah, I'll be doing that.
Yeah, so I'll let you know when to change.
Yeah.
So, hi, this is Abhishek here, and I welcome you all to this webinar. Although I've been presented as an expert in this area, but I would say this whole domain is evolving so fast, and it is so nascent in terms of its existence, been there for a couple of years, and there are so many changes which keep happening that I'm still learning. So this is a great opportunity for me as well to interact with you people. I would be happy to take as many questions, because that would be the good part about today's discussion on this webinar. I would like to understand how you guys think, and what are the kind of thoughts you have about this, and the kind of questions that comes to your mind. And it would be really interesting to understand that. So I would request people to please raise their hand and ask those questions. Like Sachin said, they have allotted a particular time during the end of the webinar where we can, have this discussion. So today's presentation is more to sensitize you people about what's happening in the fashion industry vis-a-vis the social media or digital marketing. Yeah. Sachin, slide please.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the fashion industry and the social media, the usage primarily started around 2009, 2010. When I say usage, it is, a sizable piece of the fashion industry started using it. And there are certain traits or characteristics, as you would know, being fashion graduates, of this industry as such. And what has happened is, with the emergence of social media, the sharing part of people has really increased. And when I say that, is supposing today I buy something or I see something and I want to tell people about it. Earlier it was that much more difficult and very limited to your set of friends and group of friends or your family. But now you can go up there on social media and talk about it. And, and since the people who are talking about it are the genuine users of the product and they're blogging about it, writing good articles and stories about it, what happens is people who read it, the readers, that get that much more influenced by the whole thing, right? So what it has resulted in is that all the luxury brands and the fashion brands have taken keen interest in being able to reap the advantage of investing in social media, be it for their messaging purpose, to send out a particular message, or to promote a particular, fashion trend that they want to at a given point of time. So, and what they have been doing is they have relied a whole lot on the word of mouth and viral marketing, as they say, which spreads really fast. So they actually, so later on in the slides you will see that blogging is actually one of the most important things that the luxury brands invest in as a part of their social media or digital marketing initiative. And of course, everybody is addicted to fashion at different levels. And like I mentioned, that internet has been a big driver for that change. Even when you look at tier 2 or tier 3 cities today in India, tier 2 primarily, which is picking up a lot. And one of my slides later talks about how e-commerce in the Asia Pacific market is taking over things which are happening even in the more developed countries like the US in terms of the amount of sales which is happening. And that's primarily driven because of the kind of demographics that we have and internet access, which is being, getting into the tier 2 cities and all these e-commerce companies landing up there. So the point I'm making on this slide is why it has become so important in today's age for fashion industry to be highly clued on to whatever is happening on the social media. Yeah, Sachin, next slide. Yeah, so some facts and figures I would present. Sachin, next slide. Yeah, so this is a bit about history, and when I say history, it's not too long. It's just the last 5 years. So what has been happening in the market? So like I mentioned, a lot of people go to these blogs and get influenced by these messages. And when I mentioned that, this number is just to give you a handle on that, that 64% of social shoppers turn to message boards or blogs for making decisions, right? So we all agree with the fact that, yeah, they do refer to these blogs and message boards but the percentage is something which is, putting a finger on that and underlying it and saying, yeah, 64%. So supposing tomorrow when you go out for your jobs in the market, and then you have to emphasize that how important these things, blogs are, these numbers can actually give you a context around what you're talking to your people. Then 27% of the fashionistas, costume, jewelry, special occasion, and casual clothing purchases. So what it has done is basically categorize the purchases into different buckets. So if you talk about casual clothing, now they're talking about a particular social media site, which is Pinterest. I think all of you must be aware of it. A very, very interesting concept. The way they came up with is, and 27% of the people refer to Pinterest before they make their purchase decisions. I mean, it is really, really, and these things didn't exist a couple of years back. So just imagine now that they have come into existence, how much of an influence they hold over fashion purchases. So these facts and figures are just to give you that context about how important it is actually in terms of numbers. Okay, Pinterest shoppers have created a board specific to a purchase decision. Instagram, again, similar. Inspired decision in at least one fashion category for 42% of women aged between. So you can see that the particular fashion category, which is between 18 to 29. So if you were to target women in a particular category, then Instagram is the place to go. In fact, the statistics now have started changing, but Pinterest was one place where probably 98% of the members there were women. So what you guys would need to do going forward when you get into your actual workplace is be able to categorize these various social marketing or media sites and be able to understand that what is happening where and which is the best place to promote what, right? So millennials, when I'm talking about millennials, again I'm talking about a particular segment of customers, right? So they have a trait. Again, the trait that millennials have is they're likely to watch videos online. I mean, I can vouch for this because my daughter does this a lot, and she's only 11, so she doesn't really fall into this category. However, so they're likely to watch videos a lot. So if you were to target the millennials, the right place to go would be a YouTube kind of a thing where the consumption of the content that you're creating will be much more favorably looked at by the right kind of an audience that you are wanting to engage. Because in our later slides, I'll talk about a whole lot of metrics which will be thrown at you. And when I say metrics, what I mean is you do a lot of activity, right? So a big trend which is happening in the industry right now is in terms of your marketing budget. So where does all this money come from? Of course, it comes from your marketing budget. Earlier, if out of rupees 100 that were to be spent on marketing, right, there was 0 which was spent on digital, right? So this was a couple of years back. But now if you see, the trend is that these numbers are going 100% year on year. So it is like, although the actual number would be 2% of the whole budget or 7% of the whole budget, depending on the kind of industry that we are talking about, right? But the spend is on an increase, and it is on an increase and growing really fast. And that is something which you guys should take a lot of comfort from, having done this course on social media, because this skill is really going to come in handy when you go to your marketing bosses and try to get budgets allocated for activities on social media, right? And when you are given that money to spend on social media for your marketing efforts, one question which everybody is going to ask, all your bosses and managers are going to ask is, how do I rate your performance? How do I know whether whatever is being spent is being done in the right way or not, right? So that is where you would also want to be aware that where should I spend how much and what is the right way to do it. So these facts and figures can give you some indications, although these are not rules that anybody can write, because like I mentioned in my initial briefing, that things are changing really fast, right? So things evolve. So what you will be given or have been given in this course is a basic understanding of how things work, and going forward you have to be clued on to the changes so that you make the right decisions about, if Pinterest was about women specific thing, how is it evolving, how is it changing over the period of time, right? And then who is the new segment of members who are emerging on Pinterest, and then when you make a marketing decision to target people, you go to Pinterest with that set of information, because once you're doing these things right, then your metrics, which comes in the later slides, will be will be pointing in the right direction. And what I mean by that is you will be getting the right results. Yeah, Sachin, next slide, please. So some more facts and figures. Interesting thing here is Twitter is the least influential social network in the fashion industry. Okay, I'm just randomly going through the facts instead of just reading them out. So Twitter is the least influential thing. However, one of the slides again mentions this, that some of the top brands still continue to use Twitter. So even though Twitter is the least influential thing, like I said, you cannot use these facts and figures as rules. People are still using it. The reasons could be many. One is the kind of reach that Twitter is allowing them to execute on their plans is something which is desirable. So it is not available at other places, or the quickness with which you can create messages and go in there, or the kind of audience that you want to get in there. Maybe it's not available at other places, or there is a concept of influencers in social media. So the kind of influencers on fashion industry probably that you can have on Twitter, would be really useful. So depending on the kind of strategy that you want to execute, it might still be useful. So when I show you that slide on the brands which are using it, they continue to use Twitter. So even though it is one of the school of thought says it's not very influential, but it's still being used. Facebook, of course, is very, very popular. Like 72% of the shoppers are influenced by Facebook, and it's doing very well, Facebook. And another thing that is coming up now is also about the devices. Whether you should be targeting people on the mobile or whether you should be targeting on the other devices. Where are people making their decision, in terms of where are they on their customer journey when they are making that decision. Like they start their research maybe on their desktops and laptops, but ultimate purchases are made on mobile. Or maybe it is the other way around, that the searches and those things are being done on mobile. And like the fact says, 56% of the shoppers use their mobile devices to compare prices online. And then probably the conclusion, the buying actually happens on some other devices. So devices are also very, very critical, because a lot of this marketing spent is also done based on the device, because you actually want the conversion. So the price comparison, the research and everything is fine, but actually what translates into numbers is when people buy. And that, if it is happening on a laptop, then you better be there and make your offers on the laptop ready. Real-time offers, you could say. So a lot of people are coming up with these kind of models and algorithms. And that is what, when I said I started my company, it is with the intent of being able to influence through those models and algorithms the purchase decision of customers in a customer journey. So that is one of the basic things that we are trying to develop in our country, in our company. And next slide, Sachin. So here, after I've told you about some of the facts and figures to give you an idea about what's happening, now the important thing is, how do you measure it? Extremely important, because the money has to be held accountable for. Yeah, Sachin, next slide. So a lot of names. Some people call it key performance indicators. Others call it measures, key performance measures. So this is just a research data which shows that if you go to different people and ask them that what are you measuring, right, in terms of evaluating how effectively you are doing your work on social media and digital marketing, these are some of the answers that you'll get, right? So people are talking about reach, that I want to be able to measure myself on reach. Some people talk about sharing. The most popular one, of course, is engagement. You know, sentiment is something where, you know, people want to know that, of course, engagement is good, but the engagement has to be in the positive direction. So they want to measure the sentiment part of it, that what are people talking about, which is positive, which is negative, which is neutral. Then other things, important things are like share of active members, followers, fans. So these are various parameters which is important. Like people start with different things, and again my take on these parameters is, you know, depending on the maturity of the organization, you decide on the parameters. So there's no one rule again to set it. So supposing you don't have a social media presence, what do you do? I mean, that is, then the presence is to be measured in a way where different parameters will take more importance, like for example audience, right? So audience building exercise, or who are your followers, these kind of questions come up, and how many can you build up. So when you lay out your social media plan for your management, this is what you will say, that okay, these parameters are more important for the first 3 months or the first 6 months, where I'm going to measure the audience building exercise part of it, and hence my activities will be more directed towards that. And when you're building your audience, you're not so much bothered about how is my engagement happening at that point of time, how is my sentiment. So once you build that critical mass, maybe, so there you would be, you know, engaging people to become your audience through maybe some games and some offers, you know, those kind of quizzes which comes up with some, you know, some awards at the end of it. So once they become your audience, you've got that audience, then you start engaging them. That's the engagement part. So then engagement becomes more important, right? Like I said, web traffic, I'm just taking it randomly. So when I say web traffic, there is something which is also called time spent on site. Now these are things which you would be measuring.
Yeah, Rajesh, can you please check? He's disconnected.
I'll check with him, Sachin, just a second.
Yeah. So Pradeep, we will be connecting again. He might be back in a minute or two.
Yeah, I'm on. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Abhishek, we can hear you now.
Hello. Great. Sorry about that. I just got dropped. Can we start again?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Sure. Okay. Great. So I'm sorry about that. I just got dropped. Okay. So I was talking about the other two parameters which are very interesting again for you guys. It's called web traffic. It's time spent on sites. So when you're doing digital marketing, for example, using Google AdWords, right? The intent behind doing that would be to, AdWords is nothing like but going fishing, right? So you put the bait in water and you wait for fish to come and bite it. So it is a similar thing. You use a word here instead of a bait to drive a lot of traffic and people to come onto your site and then do something there, right? So web traffic is something which kind of measures how much you're bringing onto your site, and then time spent on site, talks about how good your site is. I come onto your, so if you're not using the right words to begin with, just to attract me, you put those words there, and you take those words and come to your site, and I see that your site is not what I was looking for, then I am going to drop off, and that means that time spent on site will not look good as a measurement. I'm just giving an example of how people go wrong, that even though the traffic is high, for example, a lot of people are measuring the web traffic, and lesser people are spending money or rather measuring time spent on site. But doesn't mean that these are less important things, because getting traffic is good, but the conversions will actually happen when the time spent on site is there. Otherwise, you're just wasting money on AdWords. So you need to be very aware of the thought process which goes behind these measures when you use it. So use it very judiciously and use it in the context of what you are doing, and not generally to follow any trend or any rules. Yeah, next slide. So this is the slide I was mentioning. So these are all good brands, but you'll see that Twitter is still being used by them. Zara still continues to have a traffic on Twitter. So the point I'm making is the context of what you're doing is very, very important. I've heard of stories where brands have actually been able to do clearance sale on Twitter in a couple of hours. So what would have taken them a lot of logistics to get their material across to some shops, and obviously not in the center of the city, it will be somewhere outside of the city to some malls, and then you're going to give some discounting there and try to clear off your sale. These kind of things have worked very effectively on Twitter. So you have to use the channel that you want to have your impact with. So if it is promotions, then it is different. If it is audience building or engagement, then it is different. Like I said, if it's something very, very fast, like a sale kind of a thing, then Twitter could be one of the things you could think of. Yeah, next slide. So this is what I was saying, that word of mouth is so important, and sharing is so important. The reason that we are doing so well is also because of the kind of demographics we have, right? The huge amount of people which are coming on to internet, which is going to leave everyone behind. So currently, I think the number has been pegged at somewhere around 200 million people, and in the next couple of years, it's going to go to 500 million people who will be connected on the mobile. So that's the reason you hear a lot of talk about the mobile device, and then so many people using smartphone on top of that, where a lot of consumption of content and even buying happens. So, and if we were to talk about the US, I think they don't even have that much of people there, as many people would be using mobiles connected to internet in India alone. So that way the potential for social media and internet commerce to exist in our geography, which is part of Asia Pacific, is really huge, and it's only reflected in the way the things are growing. If you look at the numbers there, the growth numbers you will see is really high when it comes to Asia Pacific, and the potential that we talk about is unparalleled. And I personally believe, this is my personal take, that while the tier 1 cities in India are setting the stage for all this, helping all these players and the fashion brands establish their model and the technology in place and the platforms in place, but ultimately it's the tier 2 cities in the future who are going to drive the whole thing, because trust me, I come from a tier 2 city, and the amount of potential they have to consume fashion, they don't have it there. I mean, these are the aspirations are there, but the existence of the brands are not there for good reasons, because they couldn't afford to spread themselves out. So the consumption of fashion, for whatever reason, had been limited to the tier 1 cities earlier, but it's changing. And yeah, so the money is there, the aspiration is there, and with the help of internet, social marketing, and e-commerce, it's reaching them, and that is where a lot of growth is going to, and a lot of excitement is going to come from. Yes, Sachin, next slide. Yeah, so some of the trends we'll be talking about. Yeah, next slide. Okay, so I don't think so this comes as a surprise now that we have, or rather I have mentioned those facts about the written content, social media content. So, there are various ways to follow this. This is one way of putting a pie chart and trying to see what people say. The other is, in the startup world, what I have been observing is a lot of players are coming up with propositions to make content more, how do you say, to make content more targeted. So you're targeting the right people also with the right content, and it is not some generic gyan which you're blasting to the whole world. So how to optimize on the content? So there is a lot of work which is happening in the world of data science, and I have friends in that industry, and so that is where I'm coming from, who are saying that a lot of optimization, a lot of modeling algorithms are being written about what is the right content, so that when I talked about those parameters earlier of engagement, how do you drive engagement end of the day, right? We all are users of social media, and we understand that unless there is something interesting, there is something relevant which comes in front of us, we are more likely to ignore it. So this is one of the challenges which you will face, that how do we optimize on the content part of it, because the slide here shows that content is one of the most important things when it comes to influencing people. And the second one, of course, talks about blogging, which is similar. 68% of the marketers plan to increase their future use of blogging. So which again is a similar fact, that anything which is experiential in nature, that I use a particular brand of phone or a mobile and then I go talk about it. It could be in my Facebook page or it could be a proper blog that I write. People get influenced. I mean, think about the last phone which you bought and think how you bought. What was your journey? I mean, if I were to call you customers, what was the customer journey? You start with doing your research, and where do you go? I mean, obviously, close friends do influence, and you talk to them. Apart from that, a whole lot of influencing comes from the online world. So you might go to Mouth Shut, which has a lot of interesting, I would say interesting, because all sorts of things appear there. And then there are, these specific sites or places where you can go and read about stuff on electronics or on fashion or on food, and that influences your decision big time. And that is the reason the marketers are flocking to bloggers. Yeah, next slide, Sachin. Yeah. And then, of course, initially, like I mentioned, what is important? Where do you put your money on? Trend shows that Google Plus is an important thing which is coming up. And Google Plus is something which was a, what do I say, a late arrival. So while people had done a lot of stuff on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, Google was still something which was not in their radar to begin with. So when people are asked this question, okay, what do you want to do next? What do you want to get your experience or get your handle on? And people said Google Plus. So that way, this rating actually shows that where are people investing in terms of your expertise level? Where do you want to develop your expertise? And okay, tactics are top challenge. They're always a challenge because, so that's the second part of the slide at the bottom. So why tactics are challenge? Because there are no written rules. So one thing which I personally believe is a diktat, whether you accept it or not, but it is the only rule that I think in the social media marketing world is that there are no rules. It is so iterative in nature. So you do something and then you iterate based on the results. You keep following best practices, you keep learning, and you keep changing. So that is one of the big differences in the marketing world from how marketers behaved earlier. And be it any industry, it's not just limited to fashion, be it any industry. So what they did earlier was there was a given set of rules about print ads, about radio ads, about coming on TV, and the reasons were very clearly defined and the budgets were allocated. But now what is happening is things are changing so fast that you got to just iterate because the rules are still not set, right? So people are still asking those questions, that what is the best way to engage audiences with social media? What social statistics or tactics work best? So these things are still being debated and will be even in the near future till some very disruptive thing happens and they set the rules. But I personally believe the iteration is the best way to go if you want my advice on this. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, and so this is the biggest mystery, that how do you say that you are successful doing what you're doing, right? And so this is one of the challenges you guys are going to face when you meet your managers and bosses in the working world, that how do I measure my returns, right? So how do I link it up to the business I am doing? How do I link it up to the brand that I was trying to build? The objectives are there. I'm not saying the objectives are not there. Whether you want to create brand awareness, or you want to build up an image, you want to launch a new thing, or you want to drive sales. So the objectives have been set, but how do you directly link it with the dollar that you're spending on social media? So there are multiple models that come up and people claim that this is the way to do it. I don't think so. There is any clear-cut mandated way of measuring this ROI. So the best approach would be to think about the correct measures based on the strategy that you're adopting, based on the phase of your organization vis-a-vis their social media existence. So if somebody is saying that I'm just trying to start up, then audience building is a big exercise which can go on for a couple of months, and then you're spending your dollars there, and then you measure it that, okay,
Muted.
much money and this is what is moving, and that is the right measure, and that can probably tell you some things about the returns that you're getting.
Unmuted.
Be clearly defined with all the stakeholders who are spending that money. And supposing it is engagement that you want, it is you know, you're maturing as in your presence on terms of social media, and you want to measure engagements about how people are interacting with your brand, what are they talking about your brand, what changes do they want, how happy are they with your stuff, with your products and services. And a lot of times now this is becoming a field in itself, which is market research using social media data, right? So typically, I'm just going a bit off track here, but that's still relevant when it comes to your industry. That market research is something which was done with a focus group. You take 1,000 people, maybe 5,000 people, ask them questions. They give you answers, and then you say that, oh, this is what the world thinks about my product, and this is where we should go. And now what is happening is there's so much of sharing happening online that without even you're asking those questions, those answers are there. And the challenge now is how to take those answers and then make sense out of it, right? So that is where market research is moving in a big way. And there are a lot of challenges in terms of how do you collect that data, how do you analyze that data, how do you interpret that data. So very interesting things are happening. So ROI, I would say, keep it contextual in terms of what you're doing, what measures you've adopted, and then try to you know, commit on what ROIs you can get. So there are no standard formulas again around this. Yeah, next slide. Okay, so this is my last slide. This is anti-laws of digital marketing. Very obvious ones. Again, these are good pointers to have. Very commonsensical. I wouldn't say that you know, there's a lot of science which has gone into this. Luxury represents the local culture and refined art. Communicating to non-targets. So what you need to do is, these are some of the pointers which are there, and you just need to be aware of it in terms of when you are forming your strategy. So for example, develop personal relationship with the clients. I think fashion people, when you're devising your marketing strategies and when you're trying to use social media, look, the traditional marketing have been, you know, it's ingrained in their model. So when they are, supposing it's a high-end fashion house and they are doing some kind of a marketing event, they will be inviting people based on relationships and new people whom they will then build relationships with. So it's done and dusted. I mean, it's a model which is there and they're following it. But on the online world, you know, it's a bit challenging. But it being challenging, you know, these things, these tenets, if I can call it, please don't ignore it. So when you're doing your marketing strategies and when you're thinking about all these things, keep these things in mind, that personal relationships are important with clients. So even in the online marketing world, this will make a difference, right? So just if you get your messages across to the whole world just like that, you're only devaluing your fashion brand, and it won't make sense to people who can't afford it or who can't appreciate it. So these are some of the tenets of you know, or call it anti-laws of digital marketing. Yeah, so that was my last slide. Sachin?
Okay.
Abhishek, is it audible?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, Abhishek, it was really very insightful as someone who is dealing in digital and social media marketing. And that too, the presentation was very focused on fashion and luxury. So I think the students they will be really very much in depth into it and may have some questions. So Sachin, can you just check if they have any questions there?
Yes. So from Mumbai, we'll take questions from Mumbai in the starting. So Pradeep, please help the student to speak up the questions in front of the system. Pradeep, you can ask the students to ask their question. So students in Mumbai, if you have any questions, you can ask. Okay. So Abhishek, there was a question from Delhi student, Delhi MA student, but that has already been answered in the last slide.
Okay.
We have more questions here. So thank you so much for giving us this insight about this social media marketing and digital marketing. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thanks, Sachin, and thanks all of you for hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.